Hello everybody, it's George from Ireland. Welcome back to my channel. And this video is about how long the Russian Federation can sustain its illegal war of unprovoked aggression in Ukraine. Now it's been going on a little over a year, or perhaps I should say 9 years, since they attacked Crimea, Luhansk and Donetsk, but the full-scale war for a year. Anyway, so Russia's got this national wealth fund, and it's got about $150 million in it, and they spent $38 million in December 2022 alone. So they're eating through that very fast, and at this rate, it will be gone in about 4 months. So that's obviously very worrying for them. Now, they admit to their economy shrinking 2%. Now, the Russian state lies about everything, often massively. Lies like, no, we're not going to invade Ukraine in 2022. We're going to invade, no, it's not even a war. And no, we're not going to claim a centimeter of territory. And we'll not send any conscripts there. And no, we haven't carried out all these war crimes in Bucha. And no, we haven't gassed any civilians in Syria. And no, we didn't murder Alexander Litvinenko. And no, Putin's never stolen a penny and stuff like that. So we don't believe the 2% figure. There's a reason why, Potemkin villages are a Russian concept. So it will be a bit higher than that. I don't know what it is. 10% is about the highest claim there is. But the important thing is even they acknowledge that it has shrunk. Now, they've been able to successfully divert some of the oil and gas sales to away from Western countries who are buying less and not buying when it's transported by sea, selling it to China, India, and Turkey in particular, but they have to sell it at mates rates, so they're making less of a profit. The oil cap came in a couple of months ago, is beginning to work. It's at $60 a barrel. As the world price goes down, it's going to go more. It's like 5% below the world price. Could go $10 below the world price, something like that. The idea is to penalize Russia financially, but not reduce it so much that Russia's got no incentive to produce oil, because that would raise oil prices worldwide, the laws of supply and demand being what they are. And Rishi Sunak, lucky chap, when he met me this last summer, that was an idea I heard from his own mouth. I'm not sure if he's the originator of it. So that's a problem for them. Obviously, the sanctions, which have been going on for a year, that had various things they needed, transponders, microchips, whatever, but they ran out of those. But they've been circumventing those. And from people I know who live in Russia, what they're doing is they're ordering things from, say, Kazakhstan, or order them from wherever it is, Italy, Canada, whichever sanctioning country. It'll come via Kazakhstan, via Tajikistan, via Armenia, whoever. But that slows it down. It's a cost. That country, the company in, say, Kazakhstan, which is ordering the item from Italy, for example, will sell it onto Russia at a bit of a markup. But so there have got to be secondary sanctions, and Western countries have got to be bolder at cracking down on those who are helping them evade sanctions. Now, the trouble with that is, say, a former Soviet country that's not wealthy at all, like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, is you push them further into Russia's arms. But that maybe is a choice that has to be made. And Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, they send between them over 1 million guest workers a year to the Russian Federation. The Russian economy is slowed. There's so few workers 3 years on from coronavirus. They're still suffering from that. Remittances are a major part of their economy. So like 20% of Tajikistan's economy is made up of remittances from Tajiks who are working in Russia. But the obvious thing Russia can say then is that, well, you're suffering sanctions from the West. Okay, we'll give you money. Send us your soldiers. You could empty your jails. Send us your jailbirds. We'll put them into Wagner Group. We'll throw them at the Ukrainian machine guns, or other Tajik men, Kyrgyz men volunteer for the Russian army. Things like that. The same can be done with other countries. So Russia could sustain in terms of manpower. Remember, Russia had a prison population of 550,000. The Wagner Group has recruited something like 50,000 of those by fair means and foul. They can recruit easily 100,000 more. It'll get to the stage when those left are just so old, so decrepit, so raving mad, so much a danger to their own comrades that even Wagner Group wouldn't want to touch them. But and obviously Putin sees this as a double benefit. When we kill someone who's in prison, we're getting rid of a social problem. And the other thing is, by effectively conscripting someone who's in prison, we're not taking a free citizen because that would upset the free citizens a bit more. You don't want to conscript too many people, but you don't want draft riots or whatever, any sort of public opinion backlash. But, Russia's got about 140 million people, obviously slightly lie about their population. So they've got an awful lot more manpower they can throw at this war. And people have talked about Russia going to demographic death spiral. That's true, with a fertility rate of about 1.6. They might be lying about that one as well. I remember about 1 million Russians have fled since this war began, excluding those who left for a few months, then came back, mostly young men, sometimes their wives, sometimes their children, and often the people you'd least want to lose, highly educated people, IT engineers, people who speak English, people who can more easily find employment abroad. And Russia has a shortage of people in STEM anyway. So it's just simply accelerated the brain drain. So it's not just the numbers they lost, it's the quality of people they lost, very expensively educated people that Russia needs badly. But the one thing that people are overlooking in this is Ukraine's demographic death spiral is even worse. Its fertility rate's even lower, it's about 1.3 per woman. Moreover, about 20% of Ukrainians have fled since the war began, and up to 10% of Ukrainians are under illegal Russian occupation. Some of them want to be. So the Ukrainian government has in Ukraine only about 70% of the pre-war population. I mean, if you go right back to 2014, and even the war to end today, some of those Ukrainians who've shifted west won't return. And what's there to return to? A heap of rubble. So, moreover, bear in mind, it's young women and children are most likely to leave. Military-age males, aged 18 to 60, are not allowed to leave without an exemption. Either a diplomat, Olympic athlete performing, in the arts, which is going to boost Ukraine's reputation. Frankly, bribery, permanently medically unfit. Because I know some very wealthy Ukrainians who are abroad simply because they got money and they're able to buy their way out of it. One of them is in excellent physical condition, former sportsman, I shan't say who. So after the war, Ukraine's demographic death spiral is going to be even worse than that of Russia. Even if Russia didn't manage to take an inch of Ukrainian soil, they've depopulated Ukraine. And they think, well, eventually they'll die out faster than we can, or we can just take over their land that way. But yeah, so Russia can sustain this in terms of throwing men at the fight and economically. But in about a year and a half time, the crunch really comes. The sanctions have really bitten. Their helicopters and planes are falling out of the sky for lack of spare parts and maintenance. Often these are Western manufactured things. Their airlines are going to go bust. They will really try and keep the national flag carrier Aeroflot going. They're suffering, for example, there are no overflight fees from countries that are using their airspace. Just the lack of spare parts, the lack of investments. So the head of what was that aluminium company? Goodness, I've forgotten his name. It'll come out. Oleg Deripaska. He was saying at an investment conference that we desperately need foreign investment in Russia, and it's just not going to come. Look at the investment environment. There's too much state control. Innocent people are thrown in prison. We need more freedom. We need less state interference. And people just think their assets will be seized. Is really just not an attractive market. The surprising thing is the number of Western companies that haven't left Russia. Some of them think, well, we don't want to leave the war eventually. End, and we don't want to lose out on the handsome profits to be made here. I think Western countries should be bolder, saying you've got to leave. We're going to have ruinous fines, prison for your CAO if you don't pull out of Russia and wreck their economy totally. So yeah, Russia can afford to keep this going for a while, but in a year and a half, they'd stop paying some government salaries, they'd cut spending in various areas, they'd have to raise taxes, borrow more. Who's going to lend to them? The Chinese are not going to lend to them because they don't think they're going to be repaid. And they don't want to damage their relationship with the West even more. So Putin might get increasingly desperate to speed up this war and try and win decisively. Maybe not take over the whole of Ukraine a bit more, some sort of negotiation, and put this conflict in the deep freeze until he thinks he can beef up his armed forces, until he thinks the West has lost interest, Western leaders are elected who are going to betray Ukraine, and then he can take a bit more bite and hold like that to keep going. So salami tactics. He took a bit in 2014, we're trying to take a little bit for the next few years, took a bit more in 2022, 23, and stop in 2024 if needs be for the time being. That's why I think Russia can keep going for around a year and a half. There are already some indications that Putin would be willing to talk peace. It's going badly for him. Even the nuclear rhetoric is actually a reassuring sign because the conventional war is going badly. They've been trying desperately to take Bakhmut for about 6 months, inching forward. As they say, 2,000 casualties for 200 meters gained. At this rate, the entire population of Russia would be extinct before they reach Kiev. And can they really afford to go on paying this sort of price for this sort of game. But the Ukrainians are suffering badly too. That's a side we don't hear of it about as much. Not as badly because they got superior weaponry. As their military is being upgraded, the Russian military is being downgraded. Remember, Russia makes at least $20 billion from exporting arms each year. And they're not going to make so much money because partly their arms are being demonstrated to be so inferior. Moreover, they don't really have the export capacity. They're having to manufacture weapons to supply their own military, which is expanded and which has lost an awful lot of equipment. So some of the people might work in factories, might be conscripted and so on. So that's why they can't afford to keep this war going indefinitely, especially if Western countries are willing to raise costs for them by arming the Ukrainians to the teeth with increasingly sophisticated weaponry to strike deeper into Russia. Russia's very concerned about its western regions. Incidentally, just today, the erstwhile president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, currently chair of the National Security Council, he made the shocking and imbecilic, illogical statement that in order to ensure peace, Russia might have to take some land belonging to Poland. So it just shows how hyper aggressive they are. This is their victim blaming. This is their topsy turvydom. You know, if I punch you in the face and say, "Well, your face attacked my fist." Anyway, thank you for watching. So please subscribe to my channel on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Goodbye.